right, here we go. We are here today. Hello, from chilly Minnesota. We are here to talk about the 2022 Chamber Annual Survey results. We've got Frank Kenny in the wings. We'll introduce him in just a moment. If you don't mind, take a look over at the chat panel and fill it in. Let us know where you're logging in from. Be interesting to know which chamber you're with, what part of the country you're in. Is it chilly there? What's going on in your part of the world? We are going to get rolling here. So just a little teeny bit about GrowthZone. We are an association and chamber management software company. If you are interested to learn more about GrowthZone, you can go to our website, right on the front page. You can get a one-to-one demo scheduled. You can view a quick video product tour. It's real user-friendly. We will today record the webinar. It's being recorded right now. Everybody who's attending the session today, they're going to get a copy of the recording. You're also going to get a copy of the full chamber survey results. It's the whole PDF with all of the details, everything that we talk about today. We're also going to be sending along the slides from today, which are very similar to the bigger report. All right, well, look at all the people we've got here today. We've had over 700 people, just about 700 people are signed up for the webinar today. So we've got a big group going on today. All right, let's talk a little bit about Frank Kenny. Woohoo! Most of you probably already know Frank, but I'm going to go over his quick biography. Frank is a former chamber member, board member, president, CEO, and now speaker and consultant to chambers. He has worked with hundreds of chambers over the past 10 years doing board retreats, strategic planning, orientations, staff training sessions. He serves on the faculty of the Institute for Organization Management. He is the author of 3 books and founder of the Chamber Focus Show and the 9,900 member Chamber Professionals community on Facebook. Hey, Frank, maybe today after this session, if there's anybody who's not part of that Facebook group, you'll hit that 10,000.
Yeah, I'd love that. It's free, come on.
Yeah, it's neat. Frank and Norma and Trixie and Cooper travel in their RV, going from chamber to chamber, state to state, and they have been on the road full time for the past 8 years. So, Frank, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me on, Nancy, and hello, everybody.
I'm kind of on the side here looking at all of the chat and the comments, and oh my gosh, this is going to be a fun session. Good. If there's time, we might have a time for Q&A at the end, but we're going to be very respectful of everyone's time, and we're going to try to keep it to 1 hour straight. That's it. So I am going to quickly launch a poll and ask everyone, what is your chamber's biggest challenge these days? We've got a little multiple choice. Hopefully this is triggering to everyone. Frank, can I have a thumbs up if you see the poll?
Yeah, and people are answering it.
Oh,
It'll be interesting to see what the biggest challenge is. It's going crazy. What's your chamber's biggest challenge these days? Retaining and engaging is #1 at the moment. Never enough time, though. Time's a challenge. I hear that all the time.
Wow.
So coming in, yeah, retaining and engaging. Well, we're going to be talking about these numbers.
Does any of this surprise you so far, Frank, what the numbers are coming in at?
No, I can't say I'm surprised. They're pretty numbers I'm used to, for sure.
Okay, my guess would have been money, never enough money. It seems like that's everybody's comment in business these days.
A lot of chambers came through the pandemic really well with the PPP loans and grants and things of that nature. I suppose we'll talk about that a little bit, but a lot of chambers came through the pandemic just thriving. So.
All right, we're going to stop the poll right now. Share the results. All right, can everybody see the results? Does that come up on the screen? I think it should.
Yep.
All righty, so retaining and engaging members. #1, time, never enough time. Looks like that's #2. All right.
Good stuff. And then
stuff.
canceled events, that's tricky. Some of the countries having their events, no problem. And then some of the country is, they've given up for now. They're all virtual. So.
Whoops, just lost my screen. All right. So let's talk about the survey and the surveyors and the respondents. We here at GrowthZone, I'm Nancy, I work in the marketing department. We surveyed over 500 chamber professionals across the United States and Canada at the end of last year. We actually worked with a third-party company who helped us write and execute the survey. It was chambers who are our customers, chambers who are not our customers, across the board. The results definitely show some interesting trends that are impacting chambers of commerce, and we are just going to jump right into the results because there's a lot of information to cover today. All right, about the respondents' annual operating budgets. This is a question that was right at the top of the survey. What is your organization's approximate annual operating budget? The vast majority of the people who responded to the survey is under 250,000.
But I think the data applies to like 76% are small and medium chambers, and 91%, whatever it is still in that category. So if you're a small or medium chamber, these numbers are definitely going to apply to you.
All righty.
And I think your next slide says similar thing is, if you have 1,200 members or less, and you can put that in the chat area, these numbers, this data is going to apply to you.
All right. Oops. Anticipated membership, those are pretty consistent. Last year, we ran a survey as well. We asked some slightly different questions, but this one was on last year's survey, and the anticipated membership numbers are pretty consistent with last year's survey results.
Even if you're a large chamber, the data is going to be useful. But if you're a smaller medium chamber, I mean, this is right in your wheelhouse. These numbers apply to you. So.
All right, net growth. Do you anticipate your membership at the end of the year will show a net increase or decrease over the end of 2020?
And what I found interesting about this is 84% are holding steady, about the same, or increased. So if you're part of the decrease, if you've actually seen a decrease in your net membership numbers, that's a red flag, because a lot of chambers are doing just fine. The vast majority of chambers have come out of this pretty darn well. And so you got to really go back to your strategic plan, go back to your brainstorming. If you're down, there's a reason you're down, because you shouldn't be down.
All right.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the next part of that is, have new memberships increased or decreased since last year, since the end of 2020?
Yeah, and chambers are selling memberships. People are just coming in and saying, I want to join. The number of people starting businesses has skyrocketed. So a lot of those new businesses are just doing, about a third of people when they start a business will join the Chamber of Commerce. Another third needs to be asked, and a third won't join no matter what you do. So if you're finding that you're just not selling as many memberships as you have in the past, you're an outlier. The vast majority of the chambers are selling memberships on a pretty consistent basis.
Okay. One thing that I thought was interesting about the left-hand chart, the net increase in memberships, last year's survey, only 20% had an anticipated net increase in their membership versus that 44 this year. Yeah. So to me, that's good news. Do you agree with that, Frank?
Yeah, people are realizing that they need the local Chamber of Commerce. It's no longer easy going. People are kind of like, they got a ton of information from the chamber about COVID and regulations and all this kind of stuff. So the chamber's top of mind. And a lot of people that never really needed the chamber, they know they need the chamber now. They might need it for different things, but the chamber is a source to help them get through this time. I'm not surprised at that.
Yep. The right-hand chart, the new memberships, just a side note, Only 31% reported new memberships increase in last year's report. So again, good news for this year's for this year for chambers.
Great.
Did your overall renewals change for 2021 over 2020?
Yeah, so 75% said they're holding their own or increasing their average renewals, but the 25% is a pretty good size number. So you might be in a circumstance where your retention isn't holding what you're used to. And it could be that a lot of people are going out of business, or the lockdown in your area has been really severe and this sort of stuff. But then again, it might just be your retention plan. You know, if 75% of chambers are doing just fine with retention and you're not, you got to look at, do we have a retention plan in place? Are our members getting an invoice out of the blue? And is that all their engagement has been with the chamber for months and months and months? And then they get this invoice out of the blue and they're not paying. But instead, if you're making multiple touch points throughout the years, you're getting the members to use your products and services, you're building a relationship with them, chances are they're going to renew.
Yep, that sounds. My job here every once in a while is to interject with a little bit of information from last year's survey. So last year, only 9% had reported a year-over-year increase in renewals. So boy, some of these numbers are looking really nice for this year.
Yeah, I think we're coming through this pandemic. Hopefully, who knows, but if we're putting this behind us, get ready to boom, because that's what they've seen in past recessions is or financial difficult times. The chamber industry, the association world booms after, because people want they want that networking, they want the learning, they want relationships, and they join the local chamber. So I think we're going to see that as we come out of this pandemic, a boom time for several years.
Great. All right, let's talk about value propositions. We asked, do you have a documented value proposition message that you use in your planning and your member interactions? Nice, 63% said yes, but 37% said no.
Yeah, I think you really need to go through this brainstorming session or this. It doesn't take all that long to think about what is the value proposition. What value do we bring to our members? In the chamber industry, it's a little complicated because we don't, if we just served accountants, it'd be really easy to write one value proposition of what we do for accountants, but we serve all types of businesses. So you might need to do, like if you're on tiered dues, have a value proposition for each of your tiers. And then if you're not on tier dues, if you're still fair share, write ones that would reflect, for those that need networking and want networking, here's the value we bring. But that value proposition would mean nothing to big corporations or warehouses that couldn't care less about networking. So you got to have a different value proposition depending on who you're talking to. And usually about four to six different target markets or segments is enough. But you got to figure out, what value do we bring as a chamber? What problem do we solve for that segment of business?
Which leads in probably to that next question. Do you believe members clearly understand the value of your organization and the specific solutions you offer them?
And I think that, once you have that value proposition, it just can't sit on, on a desk. You got to tell that story. You got to use social media. You got to use all of the different marketing channels that you have access to nowadays. There's so many different ways to tell your story. And you need to be using these channels, because a lot of people, they don't know what a chamber is. They think you're part of the government. They think you're all volunteers, all sorts of different things where they're confused about a chamber of commerce. And so you have to explain and not just let them make up their own story in their mind of what the chamber is, because they're going to get it wrong. You need to tell them what problems you solve, how you serve the members, how you serve the community. You got to get that out in front of your prospects and members.
That's great advice. Just a little, I noticed in the chat a little bit that there's some questions about, is this session being recorded? Yes, it is. It's being recorded. Everybody attending here will also get the full report along with the recording. So I just thought I'd break in with that information. All right, does your organization have a documented diversity and inclusion policy that you use regularly? Overwhelmingly, 62% said no.
But the trend is to have diversity, DEI as a core value of chambers. I mean, your chamber needs to reflect your business community. Your membership needs to reflect your business community, and your board needs to reflect your business community. And if you look around and it doesn't, and even if it does, you should probably be thinking about how can we work DEI into our strategic plan? How can we get it onto our website that everybody is welcome? Because a lot of people, if they come to your event or they think about joining your chamber and they assume that nobody else will look like them or your chamber doesn't care about their segment, they're out, and they'll start their own chamber, or they just won't use you as a resource. So it's just a really good idea to have these kind of programs. I would love to know in the chat area, and which I'll look at after the presentation, how many of you do have some sort of DEI committee going, or you're working it into your strategic plan. It's definitely a trend.
Yep. One neat thing, yes, please add to the chat, but that reminds me, in the full report of the 2022 Chamber survey results, we have hundreds of write-in comments that we asked for in the survey when we surveyed people. So that's one of the favorite parts of getting the full report, is looking through, hey, what do your colleagues have to say on some of these topics? We pulled direct quotes and we tried to organize them into categories, but we get lots of feedback that people just love looking at what their colleagues have to say. All right, innovation and initiative. So process, does your organization currently have a formal innovation process or plan to pursue new ideas for adding value to your members' businesses? 59% said no, we do not have a formal innovation process.
I think that's a problem. Like, it's the job of a business to create customers, or in the chamber world, to create members. That's your job, is to create members. And then the second thing is, it's your job to innovate how you attract members and how you serve your members. I believe that's from one of the old group gurus back from the day when Deming, or one of the names of the gurus. If you're not innovating at your organization, you are slowly dying, you're slowly going away. And so get on a piece of paper, do some brainstorming, create a plan of how are we going to innovate as an organization. And some of the things that I've seen is an innovation budget. Like, if you don't have a budget line that would allow you to innovate or to try new things, well, that's a problem. You can work it into your budget, work it into your strategic plan that we are going to be an innovative organization. I have it from the top down, from the board, from the CEO, that we're allowed to innovate. You guys in the marketing department, the sales department, the events department, we want to see you innovate, and you won't be penalized if something doesn't work. We're an innovative organization. We're going to try a lot of things. If something doesn't work, we'll move on to something else. So those are my biggies. But you got to be in an innovative organization if you want to survive this world going forward. What do you think, Nancy?
I completely agree. And it makes me think about your Facebook group for chamber professionals. I'll bet that group, a lot of people are sharing ideas, ways to innovate, ways to plan. Is that correct?
Constantly. And you cannot be you can't be crazy in the chamber industry, because you have a board of directors kind of looking over your shoulder, but you also can't be entirely risk averse. So you got to think through how you're going to innovate. You got to ask a lot of questions, survey your members, see if there's a demand there for your innovation. But if you're still doing the things that you did 5-10 years ago, exactly the same, that's a problem. And I'm seeing a lot of chambers say, can't wait for the pandemic to be over. We're just going to quit all the virtual stuff and just go back to in person. I think that's going to be a problem. We cannot just go back. We have to innovate and move forward.
Yep. So for some people, doing virtual is so preferred. Other people, in person is preferred. Some people love the work from home scenario. Some people love going into an office. I mean, we sort of have to take our business to where people are.
Perfect.
All right, this one's pretty split. Did you launch any new member service offering or tool during 2021 that is showing promise today?
And this one is kind of shocking to me that a chamber had come through this incredibly radical change of our lives and they haven't changed their products or services. One thing I'd like to say about it is this has been the most amazing opportunity to open up capacity for your organization. And by that, I mean, quit doing things that you've done historically, that you've always done it that way, you've always had that event. This gives you an opportunity to just not do those things. And you don't have to apologize to your members. You don't have to make a post to social media that we're not doing something. Just quit doing things that no longer works. And maybe get bored. You know, it's kind of the board role to choose programs and services. That's their responsibility. But they'll listen to you as staff if you say, you know what, that golf tournament has been declining for 15 years. How about we just don't have it and we're not going to bring it back? We won't announce that we're not bringing it back, but we're going to open up capacity so we can do something different. So you don't just pile on new things, get rid of old so that you open up the ability to do new.
So many opportunities right now.
Endless. Change is opportunity.
There you go. Open innovations. We asked people about, what are some of the things areas where they've innovated, and this list lists the top areas where chambers are innovating. So events and their financial way of doing things, marketing and promotion, member benefits, membership programs, new services, workforce development, dues, technology and social media. This is an area where we have a ton of comments, write-in comments from chamber professionals on what those innovations are. Very quick, short explanations of what they've been doing. It's just fascinating.
And I love the value when I'm reading surveys. The numbers are great and trend lines are great, but individual written text responses is often where I get aha moments. So I really suggest that people pour through those and see if somebody else writes something to where you just go, oh, we got to try that. When I was looking through, a few things is under dues, tiered dues is a major trend. More than half the chambers have tiered dues now. And it sells better. It's easier to sell somebody exactly what fits them, their tier, rather than one size fits all of the fair share model. So innovation wise, dues, use this time to move to tiered dues. Technology wise, if you're not generating leads off your social media and digital marketing, if those relationships stay on social media, it's really hard to sell them anything because you don't sell through social media generally. You sell through email. So try to collect the email addresses of your social media contacts. And you can do that through your website, through lead magnets, or through a box that says subscribe to our newsletter. There's just a ton of ways to get the contact information of your social media audience. And now you have a lead, and now you can make them an offer, and then you'll convert. A lot of chambers are there now. And then one last thing I'll say is innovations around workforce development are huge. And the Vail Valley Partnership, chamber out of Colorado, just got $1 million workforce grant. The money, if you want to do workforce development, there is so much money there and demand. So those are three major innovation areas I'm seeing.
Great. I just love your comments, Frank. It's fun too when you read through the report. For example, social media. Well, I'm guessing everybody's on social media with their chambers right now, but there's so many new and different ways to use social media. And actually, Frank, didn't you this week have a big campaign or discussion about social media and how chambers can utilize it?
Yeah, we're doing a 5-day engagement challenge, and it's in our Facebook group, Chamber Professionals Community Facebook group, and it's gone bonkers. It's gone nuts. If anybody is a part of that, maybe they could put it into the chat area just to say that you're going through the 5-day engagement challenge. But yeah, social media is being used by chambers to build relationships with their audiences, to bring in new members, to increase the retention rate, to bring in non-dues revenue. It's not just a source for like promoting your events constantly. It's a source for building up relationships with people because people do business with others that they know, like, and trust. So that's what you're doing with social media. You're growing an audience that knows, likes, and trusts you. So, and
Great.
thanks, Nancy.
So initiatives, do you have a formal reinstatement initiative in place to re-engage members that you lost in previous years? This one gave me a little bit of heart palpitations. 76% said no.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's just informal. This for most chambers, they know that the low-hanging fruit, or hopefully they know this, maybe they don't realize this. The people that work with the major trade associations in the country, there's consultancies that works with the National Medical Association, the National Accounting Association, all of these groups. These groups have a lot of money to hire really great consultants and salespeople to come in and sell memberships. When they do, the number one thing that these consultants do, these salespeople that come in to grow these big associations, is they ask for the dropped member list, because those dropped members are the lowest hanging fruit for becoming new members again. And it's, you never know why somebody's dropped, and you should never really feel guilty or weird about calling them or stopping in and just seeing how business is, or what are you up to nowadays, and maybe drop that. I'd love to have you back in the chamber, or just come up with different ways to where you can try to bring back those that have dropped over the last 5 or 10 years. Your software would help with this too. And Nancy, you'd be able to look through the past list and see who's dropped, who used to be a member that's not currently a member, right?
That's exactly right. The reporting is fabulous in terms of all different kinds of member information and their activities.
So if I went to work for a chamber as a salesperson, I wouldn't start cold calling people that have never been a member. What you do is you touch base with people that used to be a member. A lot of them just forgot to pay. I swear to God, a lot of people get busy and it falls off the radar, or they had a tough financial time, or they panicked in the pandemic, and they'll gladly come back if asked. If you expect them to do it just out of their own volition, they think you're mad at them because they're no longer a member. I mean, they're weird about it. If you ask them though, they'll jump at the opportunity. A lot of them will.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, activities. This one's kind of a little bit more involved. What activities helped your organization overcome the challenges of 2020? Specific new information, ideas, or programs to help members recover and respond to current conditions. That was 75% of people answered that way.
And I'm hearing tons of chambers that are saying that we went out of our way to bring information to our members and non-members, to our community, about grants or new laws, regulations, masks, all this kind of stuff. And that they're not used to getting calls from members saying, or even prospects saying, hey, thank you so much. You guys were wonderful. You were so valuable. And it's chambers are like top of mind, like they haven't been in years, if not decades. And so this is a great opportunity to parlay all that top of mind and all that goodwill into new members and non-dues revenue.
Awesome. I'm going to jump a little bit to the middle one. Flexible membership options came in. Now people could select multiple choices here. That's why the numbers don't add up to 100%, but 58% said flexible membership options.
And I love this. Somebody's been a member for 10 years and now they're struggling. You don't drop them like a hot rock and forget their name. You find out, you tell them, we want to support you. You've supported us. You've been a member for 10 years. I'm not going to drop you. Well, and here's some options. I'll do monthly payments. We'll give you a year and you can get caught up next year. Now, if they ghost you, if they don't take your phone calls, if they don't want nothing to do with the chamber, you have to drop them. I don't like the idea of carrying somebody for months and months and months and months that's ghosted you. But if they're communicating with you, if they want to still be a member, they just can't right now, don't drop them. Figure out a way to work with them. And I'd love to know in the chat area, are you doing this? What was your next one, if you had one, Nancy?
Yeah, sorry, every once in a while I look over at the chat just to see how active it is and try to get a little insight there. The next one, communications that are significantly clearer about why members should rely on us.
Yeah, I think a lot of chambers figured out that, this is all hands on deck. And we got to get serious about what value our chamber brings to our members. And we can't just be all events all the time. Only 20% of members care about your events or attend events. So that's 80% of your members, are just kind of like, well, I don't need to attend events, or I'm too busy to attend events. And they don't see the value of the chamber. And so chambers like, well, we just lost all our events. What are we doing for the members? And it forced them to think it through and to retell that story of, we help you build relationships online. We bring you value in this way, in that way, in this way, in that way. And finally, again, it's almost like a blessing. The pandemic has forced us to really get our ship in order because otherwise we'd be a hurting puppy. But a lot of chambers figured out that, wow, this has been a blessing because we're thriving.
Yep, a good ship in good order is always important. The next one, research on our members to understand their worries and needs.
And again, before you can solve a problem for a member or a segment of your members, you got to know what their problems are, what's keeping them up at night, what their struggles are. And so if you're, as a chamber, not talking to your members, surveying your members, doing focus groups, I like to send out an email once a month to, if I was running a chamber, and this is what I tell my chamber clients, send out an email once a month on one topic. It's just a straight up email. You don't have to send them to SurveyMonkey, and ask something like, we're thinking about changing up how we're doing our morning mixer for it to be valuable to you. What is one thing our morning mixer has to offer? And people will love to be asked their opinion. They'll hit reply and they'll send you their answer. And it'll be things like, well, it has to include a chance for me to introduce myself, or it has to include food, or whatever it happens to be. And so you're going to get this information of what your members want. And then you can use those bullet points in your marketing to say, attend our morning mixer, get a chance to introduce yourself, have breakfast, that sort of thing. So but you can't just think as a Chamber of Commerce staff person, your problems are not your members' problems. And you can't assume that you know what your members' problems are. You have to ask them. And then you have to deliver solutions or partial solutions to their problems.
And I can't emphasize enough something you said, Frank. People like to be asked and people like to respond. They love to give their opinions, especially if they know that their opinions could result in some action.
And right there will lead to increased engagement by somebody that, I've never attended an event. I'm not on the board. I'm not on any committees. I see the chamber social media from time to time, but here's an email from the chamber asking my opinion. I'm going to give them my opinion, and the chamber responds with, thank you so much. Now, all of a sudden, that's engagement. There's a relationship. And that absolutely could lead to that person renewing when the invoice comes due versus somebody that's disengaged.
Yep, makes sense. All right, some more activities that helped chambers overcome the challenges of the last year. So strategic and operating plans that are reimagined using the needs of our members today.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of chambers do strategic planning, some that hadn't done it in years, some that did one just before the pandemic, but you got to throw that one away because the world's different. The actual strategic plan itself, sometimes, like Mike Tyson, the boxer, said that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, meaning that you go into it with a plan and maybe, you don't know what the future holds. So the plan doesn't, it's sometimes it becomes like you didn't predict the future exactly. So is the plan worthless? And the answer is no, because the planning process is invaluable. Just going through the planning process is worth the time. So if you don't have a strategic plan, let your board know that they're not living up to their fiduciary duties for the care of the organization because they're just winging it. But it'll also help you come through this pandemic stronger. Now that we're in a new world, you need a new plan. So.
And the time for strategic planning isn't only at the end of a calendar year or the beginning of a calendar year. Planning can happen anytime. Plans can be reevaluated.
Yeah, I do mid-year plans, for chambers, because, they need a pump, the board needs pumped back up, but also you'd be amazed at how much you accomplish. That it's a 3-year plan, but we got 3/4 of it done in the first 6 months because it's in paper, because you've planned it out, because everybody's rowing in the same direction and working hard. So there's nothing saying that you'll have to do a plan every 3 years. Refresh it up when it's necessary.
All right. And then another thing that helped chambers overcome recent challenges are communicating about work at the Capitol on behalf of members in their industries.
Which I don't see that one on there. Where is that?
Oh, that's 22% over here. Explanation.
Oh yeah, government affairs, advocacy, things of that nature. Absolutely. It's a lot of chambers avoid this kind of stuff. But if you want to appeal to your larger members, people that really don't want to come to your networking events, people that don't need to put an ad on your website or in your e-blast, what those larger members care about is that the chamber is truly the voice of business, and the chamber has their back in front of elected officials and government and regulators and things of that nature. So if you don't have a government affairs committee going, if that's just not an area you're playing in, I think that's a mistake. You need to be the voice of business in your community.
Not only be the voice of business, but also let people know that you're doing it, what you're doing. I mean, the big part of it is communicating and telling people what you're doing and how you're helping, I would think.
Absolutely. And social media is your key tool there, and email.
Oh, yep. All right, the next slide. Did your overall member engagement change since the end of the prior year? Member engagement, 47% said it's better.
Yeah, I touched on this earlier, and I'd love to see in the chat area if you're seeing members engaging more, opening up your emails at a higher rate, engaging on social media more, calling you out of the blue, or giving you notes to thank you for all you've been doing. Engagement is definitely, it's up dramatically. The only chambers I would say it's down on are the chambers where the boards kind of freaked out and fired a bunch of staff and kind of just pulled everything back and they went practically dark. Those chambers are hurting puppies. But chambers that decided to use this time to get busy, and I've heard from a lot of chamber pros that they've never worked harder. They're working 7 days a week, bringing value, bringing engagement, bringing value again to the members. And that's really going to pay off in the long term.
Okay. I noticed last year's report, 30% of the respondents had reported worse year-over-year member engagement. This year, 12%. So yep, things are
blessing.
Things are,
it's a blessing in disguise, because people were kind of like, it was the chamber is nice, but the chamber wasn't critical. Now the chamber's critical.
Yep. All right, planning. Do you have a written plan for increasing member engagement? 70% said no.
Yeah, and these things don't have to be terribly complicated. I think people sometimes think, oh, we'd have to hire a consultant to come in, or we'd have to spend all this time in workshops and all this kind of stuff. This is something you and your team or a small committee, a task force can get together. And what you do is you just inventory where you are now. Do a SWOT analysis of what, communication-wise, what are we good at? What are our strengths? And then what are our weaknesses? What do we know we need to get better on? And then what are our opportunities? I mean, TikToks, Reels, all these things are taken off. There's all sorts of new opportunities, new channels, new ways to communicate with our members and prospects. So put that as an opportunity. And then threats. What are the different things that threaten our ability to reach our members, like newspapers shrinking and becoming competition? A lot of newspapers are competition now to chambers. So go through the planning process. So it starts with an inventory of where you are today. And then you think about where do we want to go? And that comes out of the SWOT analysis. And then you create a plan to get there. It's not that complicated. It's 1 or 2 pager after it's done. And I highly recommend you go through the process.
All right. Membership and engagement. Do you have 1 or more member committees that feed information into your strategy and or operations? 69% said no.
And this may have confused some people. As I read the question, I'm thinking that most of the chambers that I deal with have some task forces or committees, but there are some that don't. If you don't, that's maybe that's not a problem necessarily, but it's a missed opportunity. You should have an ambassador committee. Those people want to be helpful to you. You can use an ambassador committee to really take some weight off your shoulders. Plus, it gives those ambassadors a way to engage with your chamber. You probably should have a membership or a marketing or a membership marketing committee. And again, it gives people with expertise in that area a way to get engaged with the chamber, but also feed you stuff that you could be doing as a chamber, and a government affairs committee and a few other major committees. But I would have like 5 or 6 committees, get them to take weight off of you, and then it increases retention. When somebody's involved on committees, they're more likely to renew their membership. So I would definitely be, if you don't have committees, I know they're a lot of work and they can be a hassle, but if you get the right chair and if you can assign a staff person to each committee, they're really worth doing.
Okay. If someone has a real small chamber, they just scale accordingly. Is that your advice?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm seeing a lot of chambers totally understaffed. There's money in the bank. They came through the pandemic fine, but the board made them fire their 2 helpers, and it's a 1-person show for 300 or 400 members. It's just crazy. So you got to staff up, and then you got to get the right chair of committees. Having the wrong chair of a committee is worse than not having a committee at all. But you got to get the right person on the bus in the right seat. But once you do, those committees should be pretty darn helpful to you.
Do you have any tips for getting that right person in that seat?
Well, just keep your eyes open. Always be looking for who follows through with commitments, who's a good people person, somebody that doesn't have to take the highlight all the time. It's not all about them as a chair. They have to have the right heart. And you got to be picky. Don't just accept anybody to chair one of your committees. It'll make your life worse. But if you do see somebody that has just got the right attributes, invite them to chair the committee and make them a bit of a hero in the community. Give them a lot of praise and kudos, and let them know how much you value them, because they're busy people too. But if it really, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if people want the attention, people want to feel important and belong. And so if you can find somebody that's already busy, busy people are the people that get things done, and find out if they're willing to chair your government affairs committee or your ambassador committee or what happens to be. And chances are they'll fit it in somehow.
Yep, makes sense. We've got, Steve had made a comment about sometimes committees are more work for the chamber, which
I know. I know, but it's kind of like a necessary evil. It's Chamber of Commerce. If you're a 1-person show at a Chamber of Commerce, it's almost like you own a business. I mean, it really is an entrepreneurial kind of thing. But you'll burn out eventually. You need help. You need the board to help you. You need your committees to help you. And I know it's a lot easier just to do it yourself. You can go at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but you can't do that for year after year after year after year. You need to create an organization, a team, and you'll be better off in the long run.
Quick question, Joni had asked, do they have to be board members to be in or lead a committee? Can they be just a chamber member?
Yeah, it's definitely not a requirement that the chair of your committee is a board member. It's really hard to get a board member that will take on that much work and that responsibility. But you do want a board member on each committee to kind of keep an eye on the committee and to show support to the committee and things of that nature. The chair should absolutely just be whichever is your most qualified member in the community.
Okay, all right. Revenue, this chart's a little detailed, but it asks, in an average year, approximately how much of your total revenue comes from non-due sources? The takeaway from this is about 46.5% on average, total revenue comes from non-due sources. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I like it very much. If you're 100% dependent on dues, or 80% or 70% dependent on dues, you're going to struggle because you don't have enough money. Dues might keep the rent paid and the lights on and an underpaid staff person. But dues is the entry offer into your organization, and it's not enough money to really run a successful organization. You need non-dues revenue, but you don't want to have so much non-dues revenue that if it goes away, if the government contract gets cut, if the event gets canceled, that it destroys your chamber, right? So you can't have 90% of your money as, from a non-dues revenue source, because there's too much risk there. So the balance point is 50% dues, 50% non-dues revenue. And then if you can get additional money beyond your standard non-dues revenue of sponsorships and things of that nature through government contracts, like big 3-year big dollar government contracts for doing economic development or tourism, just make sure that those are not year to year and you're always at risk. Get long-term contracts.
Okay. So when we asked folks about their non-dues revenue sources, the top sources that rose to the top: events, sponsorships, contract services, grants, advertising, and then there was sort of a mishmash of other things, but those were the tops. Is that kind of in line with what you typically see, Frank?
Yeah. And let me just touch on each of them real quick.
Sure.
Events are the easiest money you can get, because you can charge entry fees, you can get sponsors really easy, and events are great. If you can have a beer garden, you're going to make a ton of money. But events are a lot of work, right? If you're having events every couple of months in order to pay salary and cover your bills, you're going to burn out and burn your volunteers out because you're too event driven. And when the chamber needs to hire somebody, they're going to say, well, is this an event planner? It twists the mission of the chamber to be all about events, and that's a huge risk. So go ahead and do events, bring in that money, but just don't do too many events. Now, you can get sponsorships for events, but for everything else the chamber does. I've seen boardrooms sponsored, coffee nook sponsored. There's no limit to what people, and maybe the people in the chat area could chime in with some of the things that they have gotten sponsored over time. It's amazing what people will sponsor. And there's big money there. And you might want to do a total resource campaign. If you don't know what that is, look that up, because there's big money in sponsorships. Contract services, I touched on, that's government grant or government agency type stuff where you're doing tourism or economic development. Just make sure it's a long-term contract. Grants down at the bottom for foundations is huge and a big trend. If you don't have a 501c3 underneath the chamber's umbrella, get on that. And it's real easy to get it started. There's an easy form. Get a foundation going, and then start applying for grants for workforce development, leadership, training, all sorts of different things. Chambers are getting big money through grants. And then advertising, people still want to advertise on the chamber's website. Your email blast is a no-brainer. Excuse my cough. That one, if you're not doing a standalone e-blast to your members and charging another member $100, $200 for an e-blast, I think that's low-hanging fruit, and I would do that today. So those are the biggies for me. What do you think, Nancy?
Yeah, that makes sense. With advertising too, advertising on the chamber's website, partnership, maybe mailings, there's a whole lot that can be done under that umbrella, that's for sure.
And do you guys still offer the ability to do the directory advertising to where members can pay and get a cut of the action?
We can advise them on it, where I don't know that we actually have that program, but yep, we can help them.
You used to have that, but anyway, that membership directory is really heavy traffic to that thing. You can sell ads on your directory pages pretty darn easy. So
yep. If someone's looking for a plumber in their area and one of your member plumbers has their ad right on that area of the website, think how much more visible they are to people searching for plumbers. All right, so common lessons learned over the last year. This was one of those where people could write in their own answers, and we sort of tried to encapsulate the theme of the answers into the main areas, but we've got hundreds of comments here about lessons learned. But the lesson learned, I was so happy to see that empathy really was a big one over the last year. Communications, connection, engagement, flexibility, keep going. That was a big theme. Yeah. Virtual is important, but also live and in person. I mean, both. Kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. Frank, do you want to kind of run through some of these?
Well, I was able to look through the comments, the written comments on these, and they're golden. So I just highly recommend people download and read the PDF in detail, because you're going to get a lot of value out of that section.
Great, thank you. All right, here's a question that we thought maybe people could populate the chat with their answers. Did you learn something today? What did you learn today that makes you hopeful? The key is hopeful for the future of your chamber and the community you serve. Be fun to sort of to read through those and see what people are hopeful about for the future.
Absolutely. And I know chamber pros they're overworked. It's been too long we've been in this time. So one piece of advice would be to take care of yourself so that you don't burn out and leave. That's not going to help anybody. Take your weekends to yourself, turn off the cell phone after a certain amount of time, never return text messages at 6 a.m. because it becomes what people expect. And you deserve your own family time. You got to take care of yourself. So don't burn out. Just keep on plugging away. Life will go on. Your chamber will be just fine.
Great. It's fun to look at the comments. Go ahead and try new things. Innovation, social media. I mean, people are very hopeful about a lot of things.
And do we have time for questions? I saw a few but I wasn't able to really take them in.
All right. We do have just a scooch of time for questions. One question that I saw earlier in the feed that I think maybe it got answered already, but with committees, what about non-members serving on committees? I'll bet you have an opinion about that, Frank.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because it's an entry-level offer. People don't generally go from non-member to member with full dues unless they kick the tires of the chamber. They attend a luncheon, they in some kind of way kind of check you out to see if I'm going to be welcomed. Is this really valuable to me? And so you need an entry offer. And if you remember Columbia House Records and Tapes back in the day, it was $1 for 12 CDs. That was their entry offer. And then they became the largest record company in America because everybody took advantage of the entry offer and then upgraded to the full membership. So if you can put somebody on a committee, even though they're not yet a member, let them come to a couple committee meetings and then say, you know what, you should be a member of the chamber. You're a real leader in this community. I'd love to have you as a member. 80% likely they're going to join the chamber.
Does that date us that we know what records are and that we remember the Columbia House record offer?
Yeah, for all of you youngsters out there, look it up, Google it.
Look at them. Someone, I didn't catch who asked this, but how many events are too many?
Well, it depends on the size of your team. I mean, if you're a one-person show and you have an event even every quarter, all you're doing is running from event to event to event. So I don't know. And it depends on if it's a monthly mixer, that's not nearly as daunting as a rodeo or an expo, you know. So it's too many when you find out that you're burning out yourself and your members. And you should not be the chamber of events. You're a chamber of commerce. So solve member problems, solve community problems, rather than just be an event organization.
Yep, that's great advice. We are right at about the time where we need to start wrapping it up. Are there any last words that you'd like to say, Frank, or anything, advice or hopefulness that you'd like to offer before we wrap it up?
I've been talking to people that have been in the industry a long time through multiple recessions, people in the association world that have been in the industry a long time. They are saying as soon as we come out of this, you are going to see a boom like no other. I saw yesterday that there's a 30% increase in new business starts in the last little bit. So not that new businesses make the best chamber members. I would concentrate on successful businesses with my time of membership sales, but all those new businesses, chunks of them are going to join.
So buckle in. We're off to an exciting ride. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. And get the money. There's so much money out there. A Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit, but that has nothing to do with how profitable you are at the end of the year. Make money and put that into savings, build up your reserves. That's fine. You're a 501c6 nonprofit. That's your tax designation. That's not your business plan. And you're certainly not a charity competing against the Boys and Girls Club and the United Way. Your competition is people and businesses that serve businesses, your members. So think of it, everything you do as a return on investment. Dues, that's not a donation, that's a return on investment. Sponsoring something, you're not asking them to donate money. You're asking them, or you're telling them that this would make a great investment for your business. It's all about you're a business helping other businesses. So return on investment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to Frank for helping us with this webinar. And thank you so much to everyone who attended and who gave such great comments. We will try to pull the chat into the follow-up email. We'll have a landing page with the recording. We'll try to get the chat on there. If there are any outstanding questions as we go through the chat, we'll try to reach out to people directly if we didn't answer their questions. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.